Henry David Thoreau states, quote, "If the law is of such a nature that it requires you to be the agent of injustice to another, then I say, break the law," end quote. Thus, moral responsibility to resist injustice is the proper standard for evaluating whether civil disobedience is justified. The next thing I would like to get into is my contention 1, and that is that of civil disobedience is justified because unjust laws lack moral authority. Again, civil disobedience is justified because unjust laws lack moral authority. Subpoint A under this is that of unjust laws are not true laws. Again, unjust laws are not true laws. St. Augustine famously argues that, quote, "An unjust law is no law at all," end quote. King expands on this principle in the quote that I read earlier. If unjust laws lack legitimacy, disobedience becomes not only permissible, but morally required. Subpoint B under this is that of civil disobedience exposes injustice and preserves morality. Again, civil disobedience exposes injustice and preserves morality. Thoreau writes, as I quoted earlier, quote, "If the law is of such a nature that it requires you to be the agent of injustice to another, then I say, break the law." When law contradicts morality, individuals must place moral truth above mechanical obedience. Subpoint C under this is that of civil disobedience preserves the integrity of democracy. Again, civil disobedience preserves the integrity of democracy. Democracy derives legitimacy from the consent and conscience of the governed. When the state violates rights, silence becomes complicity. Civil disobedience is an essential safeguard. As King explained in my quote earlier, quote, "One has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws," end quote. This highlights that legality and morality can diverge sharply. Civil disobedience corrects this divergence. Next, I'd like to get into my contention 2, which is that of civil disobedience is justified because it respects the rule of law better than blind obedience. Again, it respects the rule of law better than blind obedience. Subpoint A under that is that of civil disobedience is open, non-violent, and appeals to the higher principles of justice. Again, civil disobedience is open, non-violent, and appeals to higher principles of justice. As King stated in the quote I read twice before, he believes that one has a moral responsibility to disobey those unjust laws. And Martin Luther King was often known for his non-violent displays of justice. Through voluntary acceptance of consequences, civil disobedience shows deeper respect for the rule of law than passive compliance. Subpoint B is that of it strengthens public accountability. Again, it strengthens public accountability. As John Rawls writes, quote, "Civil disobedience is a public, nonviolent, conscientious act contrary to law, usually done with the aim of bringing about a change in the law or policies of the government." Through voluntary acceptance of consequences, civil disobedience shows deeper respect for the rule of law than passive compliance. Civil disobedience is morally justified for those 2 reasons that I read before. And those were that of unjust laws lack moral authority and must be resisted, and then that of civil disobedience respects the rule of law more deeply than blind obedience. When legality conflicts with morality, justice demands action. The affirmative affirms the resolution.